1974, Ken Deardorff made the last homesteading claim in the United States for a 50-acre parcel of land in Alaska. With westward expansion mostly complete, the era of free land and exchange for development was over, disappointing many who wanted to make their own way far from the restrictions and pressures of society. But what if you could just make your own land? After all, over 70% of the Earth's surface is empty because it's covered with water. Wouldn't that make an even better place to escape anything from taxes to pollution? Plenty of people have had the same idea. In fact, an entire non-profit was formed in 2008 named the Seasteading Institute, and it aims to promote the idea of permanent dwellings and communities at sea. The culmination of many efforts and experiments since the 1960s, could autonomous habitable seasteads really be in our future? Like most big ideas, seasteading actually has precedents throughout history. Many cultures have been water-based at one time or another, and for the same reasons. For example, the Uru, an indigenous group in Bolivia, live on man-made islands floating on Lake Titicaca, which they have done for 500 years. When the Inca Empire began to grow and conquer much of the Andes Mountains, forcing subjects to pay taxes and provide slaves, they found the Uru quite defenseless and easy prey on the shores of the lake. However, the tribe developed a trick to avoid the Inca, building their own islands to live out on the tortora reeds that grow in the area. The Inca, of course, are long gone, but the Uru remain. Over 1,000 of them still live on the 120 islands of their own design. They get by on tourism as well as other traditional methods of food production and building based mostly on totora. A similar example are the Tankas, an ethnic group in southern China. In Cantonese, tank means boat and ka means people, so the name reflects the people's custom of living aboard Chinese junks along China's southern coast from Shanghai down to Hong Kong and Macau, as well as along the Yangtze River. The history of the Tankas is less clear than that of the Uru, but it's theorized that they were pushed off of the land by encroaching Han peasants. Throughout much of Chinese history, they were considered outcasts by dynasties of the Han ethnic group, fitting with the seasteading theme of escaping society. Given the difficulty of constructing a seastead, not to mention getting supplies, growing food, and maintaining social contact, few people would be likely to opt for seasteading, all else being equal. However, the concept still attracts fanatics for one reason or another. Since it could be located in international waters, a seastead could presumably avoid the jurisdiction of any current nation-state and become its own autonomous community. Now, while it might seem like this would primarily appeal to violent criminals looking to escape justice or wealthy individuals seeking a tax haven, the modern precursors to seasteading had a more innocuous purpose, and that's music. As radio stations began filling the airwaves with pop music in the 60s and governments jumped in to regulate the practice, many DJs and radio enthusiasts discovered that there was a loophole to licensing restrictions, frequency regulations, and other red tape. If they were in international waters, they could pretty much do whatever they wanted. The first broadcaster to take advantage of this was Radio Mercure, founded in 1958 by Pierre Janssen and Ib Fo. They sailed the ship Cheetah Mercure, registered in Panama, into the Øresund Strait between Sweden and Denmark, where they broadcast pop music into those countries, directly threatening the two governments' monopolies on national radio. The Danish press began referring to the station as pirate radio, and the name stuck. The concept really caught on in the UK, though, probably because of all the water surrounding it. Radio Caroline became the first in 1964 when it started broadcasting from a ship off the coast of Essex. By 1967, 10 such stations had sprouted up around the British coast on ships and abandoned sea forts. Young DJs playing top 40 music, these stations provided content that BBC Radio did not, and the pirate radio audience soon grew to 15 million people. One of the most notorious historical events involving pirate radio was the surprise upset in 1970 in the UK general election by the Conservative Party, thanks to campaign support from Radio North Sea International, a pirate radio station run by Swiss company Mebo and operating off of England's east coast near Clacton. Mebo had originally attempted broadcasting off the coast of the Netherlands in English and German, but found that they had more success with the English audience, and so moved in that direction. However, shortly after arrival in April 1970, the British government, controlled by the Labour Party, started jamming them. Radio North Sea International responded by campaigning in favour of the Conservatives, who had stated that they would end the BBC's monopoly and allow commercial radio. They were joined by Ronan O'Rahilly, the founder of Radio Caroline, and the Conservatives won with 46.4% of the vote, despite polls showing a 12.4% lead for Labour. Another precursor to seasteading was a bit more unusual. Like most seasteading, escaping laws and taxes was a big motivator, but the ostensible purpose was serving as the base of operations for the top members of L. Ron Hubbard's Church of Scientology, the Sea Organization, also known as Sea Org. While not an officially incorporated organization recognized by the United States or any other government, all important Scientology officials are members of Sea Org, and David Miscavige, the sect's leader, holds the rank of captain. L. Ron Hubbard himself founded the Sea Org in 1967, 13 years after founding Scientology. It consisted of 3 ships, Diana, Athena, and Apollo, which operated in international waters, where they trained the elite religious members who had made the billion-year pledge to the organization. These members were trained aboard vessels in Scientology practices like auditing, wherein potential members have past life incidents of trauma revealed to them so that they can be cleared. The maritime nature of Sea Org allowed it to protect the church's leaders from legal trouble that they were frequently running into. In addition to constant investigation and denial of tax-exempt status from the US Internal Revenue Service, the Church of Scientology also had issues with the governments of the UK, Australia, and Rhodesia. L. Ron Hubbard confidentially told the organization that the governments of the world were going to collapse and that the Sea Org would survive and pick up the pieces. Hubbard designed the organization as a navy with military ranks and insignia, as well as strict codes of discipline. Those failing to meet the standards are sent to the Rehabilitation Project Force, or RPF, a set of work camps with harsh conditions and segregation from the rest of Sea Org. This and other practices have caused many observers to label Sea Org a paramilitary organization. Regardless, Sea Org went back to land in 1975, though they did buy Free Winds, a ship that they docked in Curaçao and used for training and retreats, so not really quite a true seastead. The idea of seasteading only became more politicized by the 70s. The first attempt at true seasteading, in the sense of establishing a micronation outside the jurisdiction of a modern nation-state, was led by Paddy Roy Bates, who founded the Principality of Sealand, naming himself Prince of Sealand in 1967. Bates started as a pirate radio broadcaster running Radio Essex from Knock John Tower. After getting fined by the British government, he moved to nearby Ruffs Tower, an abandoned World War II naval sea fort just outside the UK's territorial waters. After the UK government banned his operation with the Marine Broadcasting Offences Act of 1967, he declared the tower an independent nation. Soon afterwards, Ronan O'Rahilly, who you'll remember as the founder of Radio Caroline, unsuccessfully tried to storm Ruff Towers with a team of men and take it from Bates. This prompted the Royal Navy to intervene, but they were immediately shot at for entering Sealand's territorial waters. They subsequently arrested Bates, but the court determined it indeed did not have jurisdiction, as Sealand lay beyond British territory. Bates claimed this as a de facto recognition of Sealand's sovereignty, which was only further reinforced in 1978 when a group of Germans and Dutch attempted to invade the micronation. Bates won the battle and took the invaders as prisoners of war. Germany sent a diplomat to the UK for negotiations, but was rebuffed. After all, Sealand was not the UK's problem. Instead, Germany had to negotiate with Sealand directly, which Bates added to his list of proof that Sealand was indeed a real country. Sealand has its own flag and constitution and issues passports, money, and postage stamps. Bates even named his son Michael Prince Regent. Nevertheless, Bates more or less abandoned his micronation later in life, retiring to mainland England. Michael Bates also lives in Essex, but still acts as Sealand's head of state, though an extension of the UK's territorial waters in 1987 technically put it within its control. In the past, Sealand has made money by providing a location for offshore internet hosting, but there haven't been any operations there since 2008. The current population of Sealand is 2. All of that history has culminated into a couple of modern seasteading proposals. The simplest was Blue Seed, a Silicon Valley startup. Like most seasteading, ancient and modern, the idea was to avoid government regulations by escaping to international waters. But in this case, it was to avoid one specific regulation: visa requirements. The founders of the company had the idea of remodeling a cruise ship or a barge and floating it off the coast of California. The habitat would provide living and workspace for around 1,000 people who could work for Silicon Valley companies or with them as entrepreneurs without the need for H-1B visas to work in the United States, though it would still be close enough for a point-to-point internet connection using an undersea cable or microwave link. The company would make money by charging rent to the workers, rent that would often be covered by their employers, large Silicon Valley tech firms. Blue Seed got a decent amount of seed funding, including $9 million from a private investor, but they estimated that they'd need $18 million more. Venture capitalist Peter Thiel, a major figurehead in the seasteading movement, had originally said that he would invest, but ended up not doing so. The company ultimately couldn't raise enough money and put their project on hold in 2013. Thiel, however, has invested in the Seasteading Institute, donating $500,000 in seed capital. The nonprofit was started in 2008 after libertarian activist and grandson of Milton Friedman, Patrick Friedman, read an essay by Rain Gramledge on the feasibility of building a sea-based community in international waters. For 5 years, the Seasteading Institute held conferences and sought funding until 2013, when they launched the Floating City project. As an intermediate step to full seasteads, the city would consist of man-made islands built within a nation's territorial waters to allow for easier access to people and resources. The Seasteading Institute hired Dutch engineering firm DeltaSync to perform an engineering study and signed a memorandum of understanding with the French Polynesian government to build the floating city in a protected lagoon. However, in 2018, the French Polynesian government claimed the memorandum had expired in 2017 and was no longer legal. They postponed the project indefinitely and cut ties with the Seasteading Institute. The organization tried to raise more funds in 2018, but didn't reach their goal of $3 million. That said, the Seasteading Institute remains optimistic, especially because of recent success by the firm Ocean Builders, a company devoted to building livable pods on the ocean. In February 2019, they successfully launched a single-family seastead off the coast of Phuket, Thailand. 2 months later, the Thai government claimed the pod threatened their sovereignty and seized it. Ocean Builders didn't give up though. They've since moved their operation to Puerto Lindo in Panama, where they've established a factory to mass-produce sea pods. The main model has 3 floors and 833 square feet, or 73 meters of habitable space, enough for 2 residents. Though the pods are just 7.5 feet above water, they're actually floating thanks to air-filled steel tubes that stick down into the sea. The Seasteading Institute claims these are the next big thing in seasteading, but you can make up your mind for yourself though. Ocean Builders is currently selling their sea pods for around $1 million. And if that's a bit steep, you can rent a 4-night stay in one for $595. You won't be forming your own government anytime soon, but it's nice to get away on the open sea, isn't it?